Every entrepreneur has a moment or a series of moments that leads them to become who they are meant to be. I call these moments intuitive turning points. I'm Dr. Meg Hayworth, and I am the host of Intuitive Turning Points. Come join us for stories of successful entrepreneurs who have gone through the journey. These entrepreneurs have accomplished so many things in their lives. I will have best-selling authors, TEDx speakers, people who've created successful businesses as an entrepreneur. It doesn't happen overnight. And as I always say, entrepreneurship is a personal development journey. And it takes time to develop yourself into the person you're meant to be, to help other people become who they're meant to be. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the show. My guest today is Katie Grimes. Now, she grew her online relationship coaching business to $350,000 within about 3 years. And now what she does is she helps other entrepreneurs, coaches, to start their own coaching business using the same formulas that she found worked for her so quickly and so effectively. So what she does is she helps people grow their business and believe in themselves. She helps them confidently get more clients. And she also helps them learn how to work less and make more money. All very valuable things if you're beginning as an entrepreneur. So let's hear our Intuitive Turning Points entrepreneur success story with Katie Grimes. Katie Grimes, I am so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be wonderful.
So, as you know, the question that I ask all of my guests is, what intuitive turning point moment or series of moments led you to become who you are today?
Oh my goodness, there's a series of unfortunate events. I would say that
Oh, wow.
I would say that it probably started. So I'm a business coach and I coach people on how to coach and also to feel more confident as being business owners. And I think if I do chronological order backwards, which is I've been running my business for 3 years now,
Mhm.
and the last 3 years have been a relationship coach. And for me, what happened was I one of my biggest struggles was that I was addicted to love. And I was
Mm.
compulsively getting into one relationship after another or feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety and confusing it at the beginning with butterflies. And I
All
wasn't
those
sure if,
loving feelings.
yeah, I wasn't
Yes.
sure if it was red flags or butterflies. Turns out it's red flags.
Mm.
And I started my
Wow.
business in 2008, 2019 after having been assaulted in 2018. I had taken about a year and a half off from dating, was in recovery for sex and love addiction, and really had taken a break from dating and really wanted to get to know myself better once I realized that I was addicted to love. And during that time, I was sort of getting closer towards dating,
Mhm.
and some new friends at that time had invited me to go on a ski trip, and I was assaulted during that trip. And
God, I'm so sorry.
yeah, thank you. It was
Mm.
it was crazy. I mean, and during that time, one, two, three, four family members had passed away, and
Oh my
within like a stretch
gosh.
of a year. And I mean, talk
Oh,
about like PTSD.
it's a lot of trauma.
A lot of trauma and a little bit of time. And I was having a hard time working in my corporate job. I had been in commercial real estate for a long time, and fortunately, I had the kind of job where I was in and out of the office a lot. So
Mhm.
I thought they didn't really know that I wasn't around. And they did. They noticed that I wasn't there as much and that I wasn't really acting myself. And so
Right.
I ended up going on a short-term leave of absence, because what I recognized was that the PTSD symptoms that I was experiencing were very similar to two other traumatic events that had happened in my life. One was growing up in an alcoholic home with narcissism and a lot of
Wow.
dysfunction, growing up in an Irish Catholic family in Massachusetts.
Wow.
And then the other was getting into my first relationship where, while yes, I had like boyfriends here and there in high school, like this was
Mhm.
my first relationship where I fell in love. And I fell
Mm.
in love with an alcoholic narcissist. And
Yeah.
it changed the course of my entire life, meaning
Wow.
that I learned that I had addictions, be it love, be it addicted to toxic relationships, be it
Right.
overspending, you name it.
Yeah.
And, I was constantly looking for the next relationship or next job to get me feeling happier and more fulfilled. And
Yeah, it's that searching outside of yourself for something to make it better, which is what we're
100,
taught to do, really. We
you really
think that's
are.
going to make us like, oh, the house, the relationship, the family, the kid, all this stuff is going to make us happier. But
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I saw my family do. That's what I saw them do in movies. I mean, I saw
yes,
my
yeah,
friends' family do it. And so I just assumed that that had to be my life as well.
right.
And, I remember that my friend's mom and one of my good friends growing up would always say, like, you're either going to be the first one of us to get married or you're going to be the last. And I'm the last out of that crew. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of always knew that my path was going to be different than everybody else's.
Hmm.
And I didn't know how exactly, but my friend's mom always used to say, I worry about my kids, but I don't worry about you. Like you're my other kid, but like I know that like you're going to be
Interesting.
okay. And I think that was really helpful all the way along because I knew that I could always figure it out.
Right.
When you grow up with alcoholism, you become a practical psychologist. You're trying to figure out how to navigate people's moods and uh,
Yeah.
how
The
their
fact that
tone of voice.
they're not present,
And they're not present. Yeah, many of,
Yeah. It's a
my
huge piece
experience,
of it.
yeah, my experience was that, I had family members say to go right, and then I would go right, and then they'd be like, "Why did you go right? I told you to go
Yes.
left." So it was a
Yeah.
lot of gaslighting, lot of love bombing, and a lot of abandonment and rejection. And
Yeah.
so those themes played a role in my life until, you asked the question, like, how did this kind of all come to be? What I found is that as I started publicly talking about my experience growing up in an alcoholic home
Mhm.
and my addiction to excitement and the certain traits that people have who grow up with excitement, including perfectionism or people pleasing or codependency,
Right.
I started to recognize, like, holy shit, if I actually talk about this more publicly and I
Hmm.
stop hiding the fact that I'm going to 12-step meetings to help myself in this matter,
Yeah.
like maybe I can help a lot more other people. And it's not 12-step, I can
Yeah.
just go and make a
And
living off
that
of it.
you did or do. Like
Yeah.
that's amazing. So was there a specific moment? Because like all of this build up to what you're doing now and what you did right before this, which is,
Yeah.
a really important piece of your intuitive moments. Um, so was there a specific moment? Like obviously you said the assault, that was something that was really significant in changing the course of your life, but
Yeah, that was, I would say that the assault was like the number one thing that changed the course of my life, meaning that it changed. And actually, I was asked this on a date recently, and I was honest. I was like, he's
yeah.
like, what's the event that changed your entire life? Well, the event that changed my entire life was being raped and assaulted. And so what happened was my friend group changed, how much I could work changed, my physical body changed, meaning like
Yeah.
I had injuries and different things and my mentality changed. Like I was more hypersensitive and more hypervigilant, and I was
Yes.
really cautious about who I spent my time with. And I remember during the restraining order, his lawyer said something to the effect of,
Wow.
I hope this is healing for everyone. And I thought to myself, oh, you better be aware that this is going to be healing for me. But like, is he going to learn from this? And
Right.
that's not my job. My job isn't to
Yeah.
control that. And so
Yeah.
I was fortunate that I had 12-step recovery as a foundation. I had safe and trusted people I could go to
Right.
who were not family. These were
Mhm.
people I'd either paid or who were sponsors in my life who I could go to and really start to build my self confidence again. And what transpired from that is
Yeah.
I had a lot of loss in a short amount of time, but I
Yeah,
gained
you did.
way more
Hmm.
because what happened was I realized, like, oh shit, thank God I do this emotional fitness work, like I train my brain and my soul as much as I train my body. Like
Right.
I can do this. My body recovered quicker from the assault than my mind did, but I
Yeah.
also knew, like, okay, while my brain's not necessarily a muscle, it can be strengthened just as much, you know? And so
Yeah.
I'm going to do things that are going to make it feel really good.
Hmm.
And there are days where it's still, I'll watch something on TV and I'll still get like a little tick. But I know, like, oh, that's just my body just remembering the trauma. And that's okay. Like, and
Right.
I think what it did for me was recognize one, I cannot go back to a corporate setting and work a
Hmm.
9 to 5, meaning I'm being paid 40 hours, but actually I'm working 60.
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't be in an environment that doesn't promote mental health and well-being and
Yeah.
putting that as a priority. I also can't work for a culture that says it's business, it's not personal. No, business is very personal. Like,
Yeah.
so
Everything you do is personal because
everything you do is
you're a
personal.
part of it, you
If
know?
you go through a breakup
Yeah.
and you're working at your company and you forget to attach it, you probably forgot to attach the document. Like, it's probably because you're in your head about the breakup, you know? Like,
Right.
I
Right. You're
started to realize
mourning.
these
Yeah.
commonalities and I was like, I don't want to hustle. I don't want to grind. I had a couple job opportunities right after I got let go. And
Hmm.
I was like, I'm going to actually take the money that they're giving me and my bonus and I'm going to start a company. And I don't know necessarily what, but I'm just going to start putting
Um,
feelers out. And
that's
so I started,
interesting.
yeah, I
Yeah.
started like bootstraps, like grassroots. I just started
Right.
calling my network and saying, I'm actually going to help people figure out if they should stay or go from their jobs. That's what started
Oh,
at
okay.
first.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting because this is a really good example of how when you follow that intuitive knowing, because like you're like, I can no longer do this. And the intuition will speak to you this way. I can no longer hustle like this. I can no longer work in a corporate setting anymore. And this trauma really turned you into that turning point where you just were like, these are my rules for myself. And then you just sort of jump off what most people will be like, oh my God, that's jumping off a cliff. That's insane. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's the only thing in front of me was to do this. And then you just each moment led you to the next, to the next, to the next. I mean, is that
Yeah.
how you
That's
experienced
essentially
it?
what it was. Cause I just felt like I remember an old client had said to me, he got an email from me because I put an email out saying like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing now," and he was like, "That is such a huge risk. Like, good for you. I couldn't imagine doing it."
Yeah.
And I remember feeling that sense of validation of like, well, that's because every job interview that I went on, everybody was saying, "Oh, commercial real estate brokerage is a hustle. It's a hustle. It's a grind. It's a hustle." Like, and so intuition also shows up in that way where there's repetitive things that are coming. And I was like, hustle and grind doesn't
Yes.
sound fun to me. What
Yeah.
does sound fun is waking up without an alarm clock and being anywhere in the world and working and not being in a corporate office. That feels fun to me. It also feels fun to hire the people to help me with things that I don't really know much about or want to know much about. But
Yeah.
I wasn't there yet,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, there's nobody I can hire at the beginning. I just need to do this on my own. What I
Mhm.
wish somebody told me was hire a business coach. I did
Yes.
6 months later. I really wish that somebody told me that 6 months, but apparently I was supposed to hear it when I was supposed to hear it. And so
Yeah.
I tried it on my own for a really long time. And somebody gave me this great advice. They said, when you're trying to figure out what your career is, you want to think of it as though somebody asked you who is visiting your city, what
Mhm.
hotel would you recommend? They said it's kind of broad, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
well, in the
Yeah.
city of Boston, which is where I was living at the time, you can stay in the Back Bay, you could stay in the North End, you could stay on Newbury Street. Like, where do you want to go? And so when he said that to me, he goes, you need to think about that as it relates to being a coach and your career. Who do
Mm,
you want to help? Where do you want to
right.
stay when you go to Boston? And I was like, because like as soon as you do that, people will know how to help you. If you say,
Mhm.
I want to stay in the Back Bay, it's absolutely beautiful in Boston. Okay, well, now I can give you 5 hotels. He's
Yeah.
like, don't be so broad, niche down as much as possible because when you do that, now I know how to help you. So I took that advice and I was like, okay, I'm going to help people stay and go from their careers. And as I was doing that, I recognized that the one common denominator as to why people stayed or left from their job was relationships. It was the
That's
relationships that they had with
really
people.
fascinating.
Now they
Hmm.
thought it was because they needed to go get their MBA. They
Ah,
thought they
okay.
weren't get it good enough. So that, and then what we recognized was, no, you have enough confidence and you're good enough, but
Mhm.
it's actually the people who you're working with are driving you crazy or not.
Ah, I
And
see. Okay.
so
Yeah.
now talking about that intuitive hit, was now I recognized, wait, on the down low, privately, I'm going to 12-step recovery meeting to
Hmm.
strengthen the relationships with myself and others. Do I really want to be known for being someone who helps people in their corporate careers? And the answer was no. Like if my goal is to be interviewed by Oprah, like the goal was to be talking about love addiction and make it more mainstream and help people understand what love addiction and codependency is.
Yeah.
And then from there I realized it was still showing up in people's careers. So 95% of my clients at one time were all entrepreneurs. And what I
Mm.
recognized was the same perfectionism, the same level of control, the same distrust they had for themselves and others was
Mm.
showing up in their relationships at work,
Okay.
in their family, in
Hmm.
their romantic relationships, and the businesses they were building. And I was
Wow.
like, oh, wow,
Here's the pattern.
here's the pattern. And so I
Yeah.
built an international company for 3 years that grossed over $350,000 US, which I
Hey.
didn't realize until I was making the transition into business coaching, like how much we actually occurred. Like, don't get me wrong, I have a bookkeeper and she tells me every time, but
Right,
like
right, right.
when
Yeah.
you start to add it all up, you're like, holy shit, I did that. Like,
Yeah.
that's
That's
incredible.
awesome.
Um, and where the pivot came from
Mhm.
is for the last 2 years, I've been secretly a business coach, meaning I've been in my life coaching sessions with my clients
Yeah.
talking about love and relationships. And they're like, hey, while I have you on the phone,
Yep.
can we talk about business? Can we talk about money? Can we talk about social media? And I started to observe that as a manifesting generator, and if I'm actually going to listen to my intuition,
I'm the same one.
people, yeah,
Manifesting generator.
people will start to tell you what you're good at if you
Mhm.
actually listen. So,
Yeah.
like repetitively, it was coming up again and again and again. Like, oh, can I get your advice on business? How would you go about this? How would you go about that? And it was all related to business.
Yeah.
And that's when I went on a date in July. And mind you, I'd been for 2 years secretly business coaching. I think I announced it like once a year where I was opening up a group and then I'd close it really quickly once the group was full. And
Uh-huh.
so, and I was making a ton of money. And I was
Yeah.
like, how am I not promoting this live? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, long story short, July of 2022, this past summer, I got a text from a guy that said, if you could do anything in the world, you had all the money in the world, what would your career be? And I instinctively replied, business coaching, without even hesitating.
That's intuition too, where you find things just falling out of your mouth that you're just like, I didn't think that through. It just came.
It just came. And
It
I literally
happens.
said, oh, beep. I was like, oh my God. And he goes, what? And I said, well, I'm a relationship coach and I'm secretly coaching. I say secretly, I'm joking, but like on the low, I am business coaching. And I said, well, thanks for this question because maybe this is the reason why I'm supposed to meet you is to
Mhm.
really follow my intuition. And while that date did not work out and get a second and get another
Yes.
date, I will say that it's something that I'm really excited about, that
Yeah.
I have been doing this for a long time and I really enjoy it and I'm really good at it. And it
Yeah.
really is about following your intuition, like listening for the signs and symptoms. What are the things people keep asking you about, or what are the messages you keep hearing that are really loud
Right, right.
or
And I
quiet and then get louder?
I love this whole evolution that you've been through, where at first it's like, okay, I know I need to leave the corporate setting. Like my intuition's telling me, get out, get out now, take the risk. And you did. And that's a big part of intuition is following that inner voice and taking that risk. And then you start with career. And then it starts showing up like, oh my gosh, relationships. And then it starts showing up, oh my gosh, business. And of course, all those things are all tied together, but ultimately you're just like, business, this is where my heart is. This is where I can do the most assistance to people. And I have done a breakthrough session with you, and it was extremely helpful. Just what do we do? Like 45 minutes, an hour?
We did an hour, yeah.
We did an hour, and it was just a lot of, it was very well organized and very succinct. And I think that's an interesting, I mean, it shows you the skills that you have, and then you combine that with that intuitive nature and help the person to create what they're looking for,
Yeah.
create the business they want to create.
Yeah, because, I do those one-off breakthrough sessions for people who are interested in coaching, but they're not really sure. And
Mhm.
they also might not know exactly what sort of support and help they need in the moment. Because as entrepreneurs, we often have a lot of bright ideas, especially those of us who are manifesting generators. Like the ideas flow and flow and flow. And
Constantly.
sometimes it can be really hard to execute
Yeah.
because there's just so many ideas.
Yeah. And I
And
want to say
so,
something very quickly. If
please.
people don't know what a manifesting generator is, that comes from human energy design.
Mm.
It's a whole system of self understanding, and they've pulled from all these different systems like the human energy system, the chakras, your astrology, all kinds of things to understand.
I just
Numerology is another piece.
I
Uh,
just learned about it this past year. Well, no, I learned about it in 19 when I started with my first business coach, but it wasn't really a thing.
uh-huh.
It wasn't really as popular as it is now. And now that I understand what my human design is, it is why I reference it quite a bit in
Yes.
not only sessions, but I also ask what we go through it in people's charts in
Oh,
breakthrough
you
session or in
do. Oh,
private
okay,
coaching.
great.
And the reason being is I think it gives people a lot of permission to cut themselves some slack.
It does, because once you understand yourself at that level, and you
Yeah.
understand, like for a manifesting generator, is that you're pulling experiences towards you when you're either leaning or moving away. And so you're not the one who's necessarily going to be going out there trying to get all of these things. You just follow that inner voice, and
It's
that's your
funny it's
best
funny you say
way.
that because it's given me the ability to one, not only know myself and give myself permission to let things happen,
Mhm.
but the other is that when life is happening and it's completely outside of my control and the adult child in me who grew up with alcoholism is like trying to hold on to the wheel so tightly and is like,
Mhm.
"Oh my God, I can't feel pain or discomfort." My intuition and my relationship with God or higher power will often step in and go, but see, this is why we're supposed to, you're going to learn something. I know right now it's a little uncomfortable, but just hang with us for a minute. And then something really profound will come through.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Didn't know that's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Wish I figured that out 2 days ago. And he's like, you weren't
Yeah.
supposed to, you were supposed to. And you're right. I
Yeah.
pull in experiences around me. So it's silly, but even when like there's traffic and I'm delayed,
Hmm.
I use that as an opportunity to go, okay, what am I supposed to do right now? I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to be driving on that road. And
Right.
maybe a song comes on and I hear that inspiration that I wouldn't necessarily have heard if I didn't sit still in the car for a minute while
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know, I use all of it
I
as
call that the
inspiration.
waiting room.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have an intuitive knowing that you need to sit in the waiting room because the pieces are not pulled together yet for you to
Well,
make your next move, or for other people involved to make theirs with you.
and I think that's
It's,
where we were getting at with the breakthrough
yeah.
session is when I am working privately with somebody and
Mhm.
they're coming in for that like kind of quick hit of like, hey, I need some relief around my business or life, whatever that may be. Because as I said, business is personal. So
Yeah.
I do cover the personal stuff a lot because I think it really does impact how we show up. Is that I think with a breakthrough session and that one-on-one time together, it does give you the ability to get all your thoughts out, kind of down on paper, if you would,
Mhm.
and then we can organize and restructure and be like, okay, what's the most important? Like,
Right.
let's put the social media strategy together, or hey, let's have that conversation with your dad that's a little uncomfortable, because if we have that conversation with your dad, then it's going to free you up from the outcome of what you think he's thinking about your business, right? It sometimes we don't
Mm,
even realize it's happening.
right.
But yeah, I do try to use those as very like succinct 1 hour, here we go. But you
Yeah.
and I were talking before the call, like
Yeah.
where I've felt the most relief and most support in my life is when I have had longer stretches of time and know that, because as somebody who grew up with addiction and with alcoholism,
Mhm.
sometimes I fear that I'm going to run out of time and there's a sense of urgency that I need to have it all figured out right now so I don't feel pain.
Mm. Uh-huh.
Coaching, when I'm doing it longer term, not only with a client, but when I'm getting coached in that way, it
Mhm.
feels really supportive to my nervous system and to my intuition because I know that the answers will come and I
Yeah.
don't have to have it all figured out today within an hour.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm
You
like, oh, if
can
I have a follow-up
trust.
question, I'm gonna hit you up after, or like, a bright
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. And it sounds like you have a lot of self-trust then, for
Yeah.
that intuition. So how much would you say your intuition plays a role in your life as a business owner, as a woman, as somebody who's dating, relationships, all of that? How much do you think it?
I mean, if you can do on a scale of 1 to 100%, I would say like 125%. But it's
Yeah.
been something, intuition has been something that I have had to train my body
Hmm.
and train my mind to do, because sometimes I have to ask myself, am I getting is this an intuitive hit based out of fear or based
Yes.
out of faith? Um,
Yeah.
And so, like, when months are quieter in my business, sometimes my fear can step in and be like, oh my gosh, you're going to live in a cardboard box for like, you're going to lose your apartment. You're going to, and it's going
Yeah.
crazy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I have to really check in, because intuition for me is quiet, it's calm, it's very chill. It's it's not the little anxiety. I always use the I always use the example, the movie Inside Out from Disney Pixar.
Uh-huh.
There was a
Uh-huh.
character, Fear,
Uh-huh.
and he was
Yes.
just like running the show all the time.
Right.
That to me is not intuition. That is strictly fear. And
Yeah.
so whether it's business, changing maybe a program or changing the price of a program, I usually will sit with it for a couple of days and just see, is this coming from a really calm, grounded place? Or is
Hmm.
this coming from a place that no one's buying and I fear that no one will buy? Because not
Uh-huh.
everyone buys my offers right away,
No. Yeah.
right? Like the first time I ran,
Yeah. That's every
oh,
business owner,
right?
like,
The first time I ran a relationship program,
yeah.
I had 3 people. The next time I had 8. The next time I had 10,
Yeah.
10. And then I had 2, and neither one of them signed the contract and made payment. So I canceled the group. Right. So, like,
Right.
and for me, I was like, what is this telling me?
Yeah.
Is there something I can do for my social media? Is there a way that I can change how I'm speaking to this ideal person, the person who does pay, the person who does sign the contract?
Hmm.
What language am I using? So I find for intuition, when things don't go my way, I usually check in with myself, not from from a self-trust place, not from a
Hmm.
demoralizing place, not from a like, Katie, you didn't do it right. What can you do better? It's more
Right.
like, what can I learn from this?
Yeah,
What is my
that's an
intuition
important
saying?
distinction to make, because when you have that kind of that self-deprecation, that you're, criticizing yourself or looking for what did I do wrong, it can really block your intuitive, as you were saying earlier too, about that emotional response and that emotional reaction. And when that kind of gets in charge, the fear gets in charge, and
Yeah.
it's running the show. It's hard to do that, which is exactly why whole person integration technique helps people to clear those blocks so that they can just let the intuition come up, because it's always there.
Well,
It's
when
always
I did a
available.
session, when I did my session with you, and what was coming to mind was the blocks and the fears that I was having, from a young child, like from a childhood experience, and really craving that need to be in the warmth and go to the beach afterwards. Like after our call ended, after the practice, we were like, go to the beach. And so, like,
Mhm.
I really honored that. Like, and we ran into our mutual friend that you and I have, and I had grabbed like a cookie, and she was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I don't know. My inner child wants a cookie. I'm gonna give her a cookie." Like, it's just, I don't eat cookies anymore, but like that's what she wants, and she wants to go to the beach, so I'm gonna do that, and I'm just gonna honor it. And it was a really special afternoon where, while my body was quiet, my brain was trying to go fast. And
Yeah.
I just kept like reminding myself from our practice that we went through, like,
Mhm.
I'm safe. It's okay to take this time to relax, because I think as business owners, I mean, this comes from my toxic work environment, but I think it also comes from the toxicity that I grew up with, where
Mhm.
my mom and family were constantly trying to distract me from what was actually going on in our family, which was so the what they would try to do is have me be busy, go
Yeah.
horseback riding, dance, go outside, play. I constantly could not just sit and be. And
Right.
I think as business owners, if any of us have had those experiences growing up or being in an environment at work where you were constantly just have to go, 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 do, be,
Yes.
it can be very challenging to sit quietly and trust that the money's going to come in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I told you, like, our mutual friend said she was signing on for coaching. So immediately my whole body just relaxed, and I was like, it's all going to be okay. Like, I get to
Excellent.
relax at the beach, and money gets to come in, and I get to be of
Yeah.
service to other people.
Isn't that just such a wonderful thing too? Is that when you do let go, how things just flow right into you, like because you're on this level of being able to just receive what's ready to come in anyway. It's all right there and waiting for you, you
Yeah.
know?
I find for me though, it's really hard for me to let go some days. And
Yeah,
I'm honest
it
about
is
that
for a
because
lot of people.
yeah,
Yeah,
because um, I think what I've observed is that the term intuition is getting used a lot lately in
yeah,
conversation. And I think that I had a client the other day, or not a client, excuse me, she was a friend, and she said, "Can I get your advice? I'm going to be getting some support around, and I'm trying to figure out, do I do therapy or do I do coaching? Can I
yeah,
get your opinion about what coaching costs?" And I was like, "Sure, happy to." So I gave her the range. Minimum
hmm,
I've seen is 250 an hour because that's what she asked, an hour. I've seen maximum 4,300 an hour.
yeah,
And she
yeah,
said, this coach is telling me that intuitively this is the pricing structure that feels good for her. And for me, it just feels like a hard no. Like, what should I do? And so I immediately used voice memo and I was like, "Do you see that you capitalize the words hard no to in your
hmm,
text to me? That's
hmm,
your intuition." And I said,
hmm,
and be mindful right now that I think what's happening with some people is we're saying, "Oh, intuitively, this feels best for me." That's great. It's okay that intuitively that coach feels that's best for her,
yeah,
but you also get to respond.
yeah,
And
exactly.
right.
Yeah,
And she
it's your
said,
internal guidance system,
yeah, like
not
you're the
someone
one who's reaching
else's.
out for support. So I
Yeah,
think it's really important to
yeah.
acknowledge. And I think so often we want to ignore our intuition because we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And
Yeah,
that's why I was,
or we don't
Mhm.
quite know. We don't know
Yeah.
how intuitive we really are. And that's a big reason why I train people in intuition, is so that you can check it with other people. You can know what it feels like, because it's really all about feeling ultimately and
It
getting in
is.
touch with that part of the self. But we're taught not to feel, we're taught to think through everything. And so we get so in our heads about everything that we can't hear what's happening underneath the surface. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's like what you're saying to that person is just like, you already know, you already have the answer. You put it in the text. It's a hard no. It's not
Yeah,
going to
like, and
work
it
for
was
you.
capitalized. Like the
Yeah.
rest of the text was not capitalized. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think intuition is all about feeling, and I've had to train myself to be in touch with my feelings. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I say to all my coaching clients. I say it on Instagram a lot, and in the podcast that I have, I say, if I teach you nothing, take this away, which is that I'm going to teach you how to feel your feelings. Because when you feel your feelings, it is easier to spot, does this feel good or does this feel bad?
Yeah.
Does this feel right? Does this feel wrong? Like, because we
Exactly.
know right from wrong and we know good
Hmm.
and bad, even though intuition doesn't have to be good or bad, really learned how to pause in between. Take that 24 hours and just go, okay, you asked me on another date. I'm going to take 24 and just think about it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
I'm going to make that new offer or whatever it is.
Yeah. Feel into it, you know. And I
Yes.
think too, we all have develop our own process of how we work with our intuition once we really learn it and understand what it is, and understand how it's a combination of your intellect and your intuition,
Yeah.
your thinking mind and your feeling heart.
So
um,
true.
yeah, and so it's balancing that and finding what works for you. So can you tell people how they can get in touch with you, what you have to offer them, how they can
Yeah.
follow you, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So if you are starting your business, let's say you have no idea how to start and you're just like, how do I do this? I'm thinking about wanting to start my business, but I don't know. You want to go into my website, katiegrimes.com, and you want to head over to the 5 steps to starting a business. This is so easy and it's so basic and it costs it's a no-brainer of a price, but you can set your business up for less than $1,500 with the tools that I'm teaching you. And I think so
That's
often,
extraordinary.
yeah, I was going to say, I think so often we think that starting a business is way more expensive than that, but it actually can
And
be
for
even a
many
fraction of
people,
that.
it is because, it's like, oh, go to this branding expert. Okay, that's 10,000. And then here's this website. Oh, that's 10 to 15,000. And then, I mean, it just like, and people start hearing those numbers and they get
Yeah.
cross-eyed.
I have a
So,
client who I've been working with for a year and a half. She, before she came to me, she paid a coach $30,000 to work with her. And she was just as confused as before. And she goes, I've now been coaching with you for a year and a half, and I've
Yeah.
learned so much in such a short period of time that like she keeps coming back because she's like, now you know my business, you're in my
Yeah.
business, you know about my sex life. She's like, you know everything. So like I'm staying. I'm a lifer. I'm like, it's cool. So the other way is private coaching,
Uh-huh.
and that's a longer term commitment because I'm a big believer that when you have that kind of support, people not only know your business, but they know your business. Like they know everything
Right.
about you, and it can be really supportive when you're trying to navigate how to make more money or
Hmm.
how to leave your full time job. And then the third way is my mastermind. It's called Expand. It's for new coaches and new business owners who have already set up their businesses and are really looking to leave their full time jobs and make more money in their actual business. And so that is a longer commitment too. So that way you can learn everything you need to know to get set up. And then if you are feeling like, oh, you know what? Right now, I just want to binge some free content that Katie has and get to know me better. You can
Hmm.
head on over to my podcast, Anything for Love. There is about 100 and something episodes all about love, loving yourself, business, relationships, you name it. And then and then you can head over to kg.katiegrimes on Instagram. That's where I spend a majority of my time. So you're welcome to even just drop me a DM and say hi, say that you heard me on the podcast, and we can leave it at that. Or if you have more questions about coaching together, I'm happy to answer them in the DMs and then we can go from there.
Awesome. That's so great. I love that you are helping people transition really from that corporate world to their own business. And you've done it. You know what this is
Yeah.
like. You know all the struggles. You also know, and I say this at the very beginning, the opening of this podcast is being an entrepreneur is a personal development journey and it doesn't stop. It keeps, I always say the fun never stops. As long as you're in a body, you can always learn, grow, and evolve. So,
I
um,
often say to
yeah.
clients, if you want to get to really know yourself, do one of two things: start a business or get into a relationship with someone else. Because you're going to learn a couple things about yourself.
Exactly. The
It's going
greatest
to
teachers
challenge you in
ever.
the best ways possible.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, Katie, I've had the best time talking to you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I know this podcast is going to help so many people.
I am
Um,
too. I'm confident of
yeah,
it. Thank you so much for
yeah,
having this platform and having me on as a guest. I really appreciate it.
yeah, you're so welcome. All right, thanks everyone for listening, and I hope this information will help you get well now. Thank you so much for watching Intuitive Turning Points. I want you to go ahead and like the video and please subscribe to my channel and then ring the bell to get notifications of future episodes so that you can get the latest in Intuitive Turning Points, stories of successful entrepreneurs. I'm Dr. Meg Hayworth. Get your dose of inspiration right here on Intuitive Turning Points. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so grateful for you.